To get the most out of your time in the gym, you're going to want to stay until the end of this video because if you're a beginner, we have a lot of great information today that is going to save you so much time and heartache in the gym that you'll be able to become a pro in no time. We're going to talk today about how to get more push-ups, how to train around a bicep injury, and even how to lose fat and potentially gain some muscle at the exact same time. So go ahead and make sure, if you aren't already, like this video and subscribe to the channel as we help individuals of all abilities in life improve their overall health and fitness capacities inside the gym and outside the gym. And we have got a really good one today, so I am super excited for you that you are joining me for today. The first thing that I wanted to discuss with you all is this idea of getting more push-ups. So you might only be able to get 1, 2, maybe 5 push-ups, right? But you want to be able to get to a point where you can do multiple push-ups a day and do multiple sets of multiple push-ups a day, okay? So right now, let's look at a simple basic program of what you can do to improve your push-up strength and to ultimately progress to the point where you're able to do so many push-ups that your friends won't even recognize you. So when it comes to improving your push-up strength, we need to focus specifically on targeting a few different muscles, okay? And these muscles that help you to do push-ups are, generally speaking, your chest, your triceps, and your anterior or front deltoid, okay? On top of that, you also do need to have some decent core strength as well. But for the most part, if you have enough core strength to just hold yourself up in a basic plank for a few seconds, you'll be okay. If not, you'll definitely have to work your core strength as well. But generally speaking, for the most part, it's going to target your chest, triceps, and anterior deltoids, okay? So it makes sense that we need to, of course, get all of these muscles stronger collectively. And these different muscles can be worked in exercises that aren't the push-up. For example, something like a bench press would work the same plane of motion and a lot of the same muscles that a push-up would work. The thing about the bench press is, as I just mentioned though, you aren't going to be working your core quite as much, so that's one thing. Also, the bench press isn't a body weight exercise. You're using an external load instead of your internal or body weight load. Dumbbell bench press is the same. Will work very similar muscles, those chest, triceps, and anterior deltoids or your front deltoids. And all of those, in addition to a machine press where maybe you're just getting on to any of those pressing machines and just literally practicing pressing your arms and locking them out as long as you can. All of those are going to be superb ways to target your triceps, chest, and deltoids, right? But here's the deal with all of these. You can't just do these and expect that your push-up strength will improve. And this is because specificity is king, okay? So when we talk about specificity, specificity is essentially saying that you need to be doing that exact movement or a movement similar to it to some degree. Otherwise, you're not going to get good strength outcomes, you're not going to get good endurance outcomes, and you're not going to ultimately improve as much as you could if you just did that exact exercise. So for example, in this context, you might be doing bench press because you heard that, hey, it's going to improve my muscles that are worked in the push-up. And that is absolutely true. But since you're not actually practicing the push-ups, that motor pattern and those skills of just doing the push-up aren't there. Even if the muscle is strong, you need to train that now bigger muscle to do the movement you want it to do, okay? So you need to be doing the body weight exercises as well, is basically the long story short here. And maybe you're somebody who's saying though, like, I can't do any push-ups at all. right? I try to do one and it's just not happening. So in that case, what do? Should I just completely avoid them? Will I never get push-ups again? Well, there's a few different things that you could do. You could do some push-up regressions. You could also strengthen your chest, triceps, and anterior deltoids in some of those exercises we just talked about, like the bench press, like the dumbbell bench press, like the machine press, right? All of those different things can be used to get you to a baseline of maybe getting enough strength so you are able to hopefully move to a normal push-up. But in addition to this, you can also do some push-up regressions, okay? So I have a really nice video on my channel of this. Actually, it's called, I think, how to go from 0 to 1 push-ups when you can't do anything, or 0 to 10 push-ups when you can't do any. It demonstrates all of these, so check that out after you're done watching this video. But the wall push-ups are a really great option. Just go up to a wall, go down as far as you can. You're going to be on kind of a slight lean, a slight incline, and you're just going to do push-ups off the wall. Super simple, super easy. I do these with some of my senior clients, and a lot of them can do multiple sets of these push-ups, and it's very easy to scale this based off your own ability, right? In addition to this, we have some elevated push-ups, and this is similar to wall push-ups, but it's going to be a little bit more tougher. And when we're elevating our push-ups, you can do it on a lot of different things. You could do it on a bench, so just like a bench that's maybe like a foot or 2 feet off the ground, and you're gonna put your hands on it and do push-ups off the bench. You could do it with a power rack and a bar, maybe off of a countertop. And again, the video on my channel of this is excellent, so make sure to go check that out. It's got a lot of great options. Knee push-ups, so simply get on the ground, act like you're going to do a push-up, but instead of coming up on your toes, you're going to do it off your knees. This is going to take a little bit of the stress off of your core. So if you have kind of a weaker core, it's going to help to build up that core to get a full push-up. In addition to that, you can also do this literally anywhere too. I like it if you don't have a bench, you can do knee push-ups just on the ground anywhere. It's great. Just make sure to maybe have some padding on the ground, because that's going to make it a little bit more palatable and not harm you such as much. Because I know sometimes when I do those knee push-ups, it gets a little uncomfortable on the knees, right? Banded push-ups are another great option to help build your push-up strength. And this can be done with basically you're going to put a resistance band kind of around both your elbows, so when you go down to the ground, it's going to be pushing against your chest. So if you think about it, then the band is assisting to push you up, back up to the ground, or back up to your normal starting push-up position. And I don't have a video of this on my channel. I actually should make one, because this is another variation that's really good. I don't even have that one in that video I was discussing, but ultimately, when you find a push-up regression that you enjoy, start with the variation. Try to get multiple sets of 10 in a day, okay? So maybe just build up. If you can only do 5 right now, try to do multiple sets of 5 every day. Ultimately, until you can get to a place where you can do multiple sets of 10 push-ups a day. Over time, once you get to sets of 10 of these, you might be able to start incorporating getting 1 or 2 or even 3 push-ups in your normal day, okay? And then at that point, you can build up, and just consistency is key here, right? If you fall off and quit, it's not going to work. But essentially, if you follow this program for the rest of your life, you will be able to get multiple push-ups and more, especially if you are very diligent. So go ahead and drop a like if that gave you some value. Go do some push-ups and check out that video we discussed. You will enjoy it greatly. On top of that, a lot of people who are first starting out are extremely scared to lift. They're nervous about hurting themselves, and unfortunately they have a lot of narratives about lifting from lots of people outside in the outside world, right? So here's the thing about resistance training if you are scared to lift, okay? So let's first discuss resistance training versus weight training, because when we discuss resistance training, we'll quickly realize that a lot of people are actually scared of the idea of using weights and free weights. It's not necessarily resistance training in general, okay? So, resistance training is essentially any exercise that puts stress and demands on the body above a certain threshold, right? So, this is something where you can't do it for a long time. After maybe 10 15 times, you're going to be exhausted. You need to rest the muscles. Resistance training, of course, isn't something like walking where you could do that for a very long time. It's very repetitive. That's considered cardiovascular physical activity, okay? But resistance training is a little different, because resistance training is essentially that point where your muscle can't do it for a long period of time. So resistance training can include weight training, and this is one of the things I want you to pay attention to. It can include weight training, but it doesn't have to necessarily be weights, okay? So to do resistance training and to get the benefits of resistance training, improved muscle mass, improved joint strength, improved just general strength to do activities of daily life. You look better, right? All these things. You don't have to stick to free weights. Now, free weights and weight training make it much easier because it's easier to overload and stress the body, but there are a lot of other different ways too. So, weight training, as I discussed, is one of the ways we can use external load to challenge the body. And typically, weight training will be something like free weights. So dumbbells at the gym, they're those single dumbbells that you see people doing crazy exercises with. Maybe you've seen a barbell where there's a bar and there's weights on the side. Both of those are different types of ways that you can actually weight train. Those are also forms of resistance training, but that's not everything, because you can also weight train by doing machines, okay? Now, the machines are going to take out some of the stability factor that happens when you are trying to lift, so it's going to make it a little bit easier on you. And as we'll see in a second, that will actually be a really good way to start out in resistance training if you are somebody who is scared to lift and think you're going to hurt yourself or just do something wrong, make yourself look silly, etc. But that's the difference. Resistance training is any type of stress placed on your body through an external load or even body weight, but it needs to be a load that is challenging, okay? Not something you can do for a long period of time. Weight training is a form of resistance training. So if you're scared with weight training specifically, like doing those free weights, and honestly, when I first started, I get it. I was really intimidated too. But what you can do is start with resistance bands. You can start with doing some body weight exercises, and you can start with some very light machines as well. And these give you some really good options because resistance bands are in a lot of different loads, and a lot of them, when you see them at the gym, are pretty light. So when you just do some exercises with those resistance bands, there's not a lot of people becoming scared of doing exercises with them, at least when I've worked with them, because they realize, like, oh my gosh, I can do this resistance forever. They're very light, very non-intimidating. Body weight exercises, this is where a lot of people start. Just doing some body weight squats, some body weight push-ups. Maybe you're able to hold a plank. All of these are different great options to, lunges. Lunges are another really great body weight exercise. But it takes no external load. If you accidentally, stumble or, lose your balance when you're doing these exercises, you're not going to fall and hurt yourself with those weights. So that's great. And then, of course, if you're also scared, those very light machines too. Man, this is great because you can still get that load. You can still get some external resistance, but it doesn't have to be super crazy. When you're going into the gym, you got to realize that any external load beyond what you can currently do even if it is a somewhat lighter weight, quote unquote lighter weight, if it's still relatively heavy for you, that's still going to provide some massive benefits to improving your overall fitness and strength. Okay, so kind of the idea with this too is that you want to try to build up to those harder variations when you become comfortable of doing these normal variations, right? Or these kind of starting variations. So you still get lots of benefits derived from doing any external resistance training. Like you still get benefits from resistance bands and bodyweight training, all these things. But there is a point of diminishing returns where you won't build much muscle and you won't build much strength anymore doing these things. So the exercises we talked about to start out with are kind of like training wheels to get you comfortable to working out. So then hopefully you improve your overall confidence, maybe get a trainer and start learning how to do those more complex exercises with the free weights. The other thing I did want to mention too, when we talk about building muscle mass between machines and free weights, there is no difference in muscle mass built from doing a, let's say, machine leg press to a back squat, for example. The thing is though, the back squat is very strength specific. So you may notice that you can do a lot of weight on a machine leg press, for example, but the second you get to a back squat, you can barely lift anything. This is because there's a lot of other muscles involved in a back squat. There's a balance component. There's a lot of different things. So when it comes to the overall muscle mass build, you're going to be basically the same as long as the muscle is being worked through a full range of motion. But when it comes to the free weights, you're going to build more general strength through more complex movement. Okay, so scared to lift, go in, try anything, do anything, be open to anything. You got this. Go ahead and drop a like if that section gave you some good value. And we have some other good stuff here. So in addition to that, a lot of people, once they do learn the ropes of the gym and they actually start doing some free weights and they don't become scared anymore, they might get to a point where they start working out a lot and they want to build some more muscle. So they start bulking. And when somebody starts bulking, they usually go off the rails. And they go off the rails to the point where they gain so much fat that they don't even know who they are in the mirror. They look at themselves and they're like, was this even worth it? So when should you stop bulking? Well, let's look at the purpose of bulking in general. So the purpose of bulking, when we look at it, is to increase as much muscle as possible without gaining that much fat, okay? And we do this by increasing the amount of calories we consume over the threshold of maintenance calories. So this idea of maintenance calories is essentially the amount of calories or energy your body needs from food every single day to maintain the current body weight that you're at, okay? So it makes sense that if you're overeating, you are going to gain weight, you are going to bulk up. But if you overeat too much, you might gain too much fat and not really much muscle in the meantime. So those extra calories will absolutely give your body extra basically building blocks and structures to help build more muscle. Extra calories also help you greatly to fuel your workouts. So if you think about it too, the harder your workout is, likely the higher intensity that your workout might be, right? And if you think about it, if you have a really high intensity workout and you're recovering properly from that, right? you're getting those extra calories in, you're getting those extra nutrients in, that is going to lead you to much more muscular growth because of that extra nutrients, right? So it kind of goes hand in hand. Not only will you be able to push harder, but since you're getting more nutrients, you're able to recover more from pushing harder. So that is exercise science 101. You need a workout, you need that stimulus, and then you need to recover from the stimulus. And then the better you recover from that tough workout, the better you're going to adapt. Boom. That's how bulking works in a nutshell. Without those extra calories, though, your body will use available energy, as in stored fat, to survive and do all the processes it needs to function on a daily basis. So this could be something like when you're trying to lose weight, for example, and you're cutting your calories, your body's not in a prime state to build muscle because they're taking all of that necessary energy that you're eating and putting it directly towards keeping your body in homeostasis. And then even at that point, you're still eating less than your body needs to maintain its weight and to maintain homeostasis. So then it's going to start taking it not only from your fat, but also your muscle. So I just wanted to kind of set this up to describe the purpose of bulking and give you some context, because that helps to kind of know for yourself, when you should pretty much stop. So when it comes to when to stop, you got to know your limit first off, right? If you're somebody who is okay with just being a little fluffy, that's your limit. If you're somebody who's okay with lots of extra fat, that's your limit. There's no really right or wrong answer here, but you just need to know simply for you what you are comfortable with. If you are somebody who's maybe more athletic or in a sport, for example, that kind of caters towards individuals who are a little bit heavier, it might be a little more advantageous for you to go ahead and just have a little extra fat because that helps you in your sport. But for most people, going towards that little fluffy is probably better long term because you won't have to do such a drastic cut later afterwards from this bulk, right? So the other thing I want to tell you too is that fat gain will absolutely occur. And you need to be okay with this because without fat gain, you also won't really be gaining muscle at all. Because when you're bulking, period, when you're increasing your caloric intake over the amount of calories you need to maintain your body weight, it's going to spill over to some degree. Some of that will be muscle and some of it will be fat. Okay, there's no differentiating between the two. I will say though, the slower you go, your body composition will likely look better because you're going to be building muscle at a certain rate. And if the fat kind of matches that certain rate, your body's going to look much better than if you just build muscle at that certain rate and then put on a bunch of extra fat. You're going to look a lot worse, right? Another thing you can do to know when to stop is to simply look at your overall strength. So is your strength increasing rapidly? Is it going up super, super fast? If it is, that might be a case to keep bulking. Or has it plateaued? Has it completely gone off the case and you find that even eating an extra 500 calories per day, it isn't even helping your strength at all anymore, it's just making you more fat? That's probably a good time to kind of reassess where you're at. So if your strength has stopped and you are too fat for your liking, I definitely recommend either doing two things. One, you could either do a very slow cut. You could do a slow cut where you are gently going to ease those calories off, go into a slight calorie deficit. So then over time, what will happen when you do this is you will be able to shed off some of that fat and preserve a lot of that muscle, because the slower and the more controlled your cut is, the more you're going to be able to preserve that muscle and strength. You could also just go into maintenance for a little bit. And this was kind of a way to naturally cut just a little bit, but it's not going to be too much. because if you have been bulking up to this point and you're eating over your maintenance calories, just going down to maintenance calories will kind of effectively be a mini cut of sorts. So some people like doing those mini cuts for a couple weeks, just losing a little bit of fluff and then going back onto their bulk. I've done this before. I think it works out great. Either way, it's just depending on if you want to fully go into cutting mode or go into kind of a half cut and then go back into bulking, right? At the end of the day too, what I think all people should consider doing is what we call lean bulking, okay? Now, lean bulking is great because it is essentially a way to bulk for literally the rest of your life. And how you will do this is, I wrote deficit on here. Small calorie surplus is actually what you need, not a small calorie deficit, apologize. Small calorie surplus is what you're going to need. So maybe 200 to 300 calories over your current calorie eating, and you're basically going to eat at this forever. And you will notice that just this slight surplus will give you a little bit of extra energy, and although it will be very, very small, the gains from this over time will compound tremendously, where you'll basically be building a very, very small but appreciable size of muscle for a very long period of time. The thing that works great about this though is that since your calorie surplus is so small, you aren't going to have to worry about really cutting that much. So instead of doing a really big bulk and then a cut where like you hate your life, you're going to be basically bulking forever. So you can always enjoy food. Don't have to worry about it. If you get to a point where you get a little fluffy, you can kind of cut back and do some of those maintenance things we just talked about, right? Going down to maintenance for a little bit. That's a great option to do. But the lean bulking or clean bulking or forever bulking, whatever you want to call it, is a really great option that I'd recommend for most people to try to do once you get to a lean enough point, right? You want to start this at a point where you're okay with getting a little bit of extra fat, because as we discussed, fat will occur on a weight gain diet when you're bulking, but it doesn't have to be overblown, right? It doesn't have to be overblown. So go ahead, comment down below what your bulking plans are. I'm curious with everyone and what your goals are with bulking, and also let me know too if you've had any bulking that has gone very, very wrong, because I've had that happen too. I gained, I think it was like 10 pounds in a week when I was on vacation one time. I didn't have the best relationship with food and I overate quite a bit. So I'm curious too. I'm sure some of you have similar regards to that as well. So in addition to that, we can also look at working out with a specific type of injury. And this specific type of injury is working out with an inflamed biceps tendon. Now, your biceps tendon is essentially right here near your elbow, and it's also, there's another one that's up here near your shoulder. So your biceps attaches at your shoulder and at your elbow. So that's the first thing I wanted to start off with, is that's where it is. But what we really want to know is what exercises will affect the biceps tendon and how should we work around those so you don't cause it any more injury, you don't cause it any more harm, and hopefully you can get back to a point where you are doing exercises that do directly target and work the biceps tendon, because you don't want to just completely get rid of them, because you're going to get very weak and potentially lose all your strength for that. So we want to get to a point where you can get back up to par, right? So as I just discussed, the biceps tendon can attach at the elbow and the shoulder. So it would make sense that any movement that involves the shoulder and elbow joint, for the most part, and we'll discuss this in a second, for the most part, will target that biceps tendon. So if you have an inflamed biceps tendon, or if you just have some kind of like a nagging overuse injury in that area, just realize that those specific movements are going to work and stress that directly. When I say stress, stress isn't necessarily a bad thing. Stress is just going to be applied to the load. You might have overstressed it to a point where it does need to rest and kind of cut back on the volume and overall intensity of the exercise, but stress isn't inherently bad. So the movement specifically that would likely cause some issues is elbow flexion movements. So elbow flexion is essentially anytime you're taking your elbow from a straight position and bending it in. That movement directly is from your biceps muscle, which the biceps tendon that attaches muscle to bone, that's getting used in that movement. So an example of exercises that involve this are any type of biceps curl, and it doesn't have to be a simple biceps curl. It can be like an alternating curl. It can be a reverse curl. It can be a neutral grip curl. You know, all of these to some degree are going to target elbow flexion, okay? In addition to that, any type of rowing movement, so a movement where you have, say, a dumbbell or any object in front of you, and you are pulling it towards your chest, that is also going to work your biceps tendon because it's working elbow flexion to some degree. Pull-ups or pull-downs, lat pull-downs or pull-ups, same concept. You are starting your arm in a straight position and you are coming down, which is going to ultimately flex your elbow and work the biceps tendon in that exact area, right? In addition to this, the biceps tendon can actually help with shoulder flexion as well. So it's bringing your shoulder up higher, up in front of you. So some of the movements that are targeted with shoulder flexion could be a front raise. So that's just lifting a weight up in front of you. Bench press will do this, push-ups, of course, and even overhead press to some degree, either with dumbbells or a barbell, doesn't particularly matter. All of these are going to work your biceps tendon. So what we want to do is limit these movements if our doctor is prescribing us to kind of take it easy for a little bit of this. So, you know, when I say limit, there's a few different ways that we can kind of limit this. Some may tell you to do nothing, like completely cut off the exercises. I go from a more motion is lotion aspect of this, where doing a little bit of movement without pain in the area just to continue to get blood flow and nutrients to those areas, to continue to keep the muscle as strong as possible, to keep the tendon as strong as possible while still giving it time to rest. That's kind of what I normally do. So, you know, consult with your doctor, whoever it is, but there's a reason why people do PT. It's because literally not doing any type of physical activity is just going to usually make the pain worse. So doing some very low dosed physical activity where you're doing lots of repetitions and fairly low volume for the most part, compared to what you would do in the gym, and low intensity, that's usually what gets people back up to par. So this can mean using very, very, very extremely light loads. Sometimes it might not even be a load at all. Maybe it's when you're doing an overhead press, you're just doing an overhead press with your arm, okay? Is that painful? Great. Stick with that for a little bit. A slow tempo, so controlling the movement, feeling that muscle and the tendon work through the entire range of motion. It's a great way to do it. And then over time, ideally, you're going to be able to ease back into those heavier movements. And when I say ease back, I mean ease back. Ease back into this, because the last thing you want to do is to tweak it again, make it worse. Remember that fitness and health and all these things are largely derived benefits from doing it for a long period of time. So you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot if you jump back in super quickly after you had an injury. Just remember that, you can still train legs and abs heavy. You can still do harder exercises. You can still get on a bike and pedal as hard as you can and get some good cardiovascular exercise. You just need to be careful when doing it with the arms are involved. So we can think about like a goblet squat, for example. A goblet squat is a leg exercise. You're holding that dumbbell or kettlebell in front of you and then just doing squats. But this does target your biceps a little bit. It is targeting elbow flexion a tiny bit. So that might not be the best option for you. Instead, doing maybe like a leg press, or you might even be able to get away with a back squat if you're not putting too much pressure on your arms, right? But ultimately, trying to limit the arm movements, specifically shoulder flexion and elbow flexion, as much as you can is going to be the best case scenario for you. Try to do them and then ease back into them over time. Go ahead and drop a like if that section gave you some value and provided you some knowledge. And go ahead and comment down below too if you have any questions on this. I know it can be kind of confusing when you're trying to find out what to do when you're working out and whatnot. So drop those down below. I will definitely get to them when I can. In addition to injuries, a lot of people, when they first start out, are extremely nervous. And they may be so nervous that they just bought a gym membership, but they just can't even go. They can't get themselves to a point where they're even comfortable enough to go to the gym. And this is really sad. It's sad not because, they're less of a person and they should feel bad about themselves. It's sad because they're ready to take a step in the right direction to make themselves healthy. They're ready to take a step in the right direction to make themselves fit. But something about the gym atmosphere is kind of intimidating. So I'm going to give you some good insight on how to deal with gym intimidation. So hopefully you can get to the gym and work out without worrying about anything and just enjoying being a healthier version of yourself. So when dealing with gym intimidation, one of the best things that you can do is to go in with a plan. So you might even go to the extent of having a day where you go literally into the gym, not planning on working out, to just walk around, see what there is, and plan what you're going to do in your gym time, okay? That could potentially be a great option. Once you do this, you can see, oh yeah, I recognize that exercise, that exercise is on that program I'm going to follow from online. You can kind of pick together the little routine you're going to do, and you can map out literally in your head where you are going to go from exercise to exercise to exercise, so you don't have to overthink. You don't have to think about, oh, all these people are looking at me, try to find something to do. No, you know exactly what you're going to do before you even step into the gym itself, okay? So on top of this, you can also really stick to exercises that you know how to do and exercises that empower you. And this is incredibly crucial because a lot of people will maybe start trying to do an exercise that they've never seen actually done in front of them. Maybe they just saw it on TikTok or something, or even YouTube, God forbid, and they're just going to try it for themselves, but they've never learned how to do it properly. They don't know how to do it properly, and that can be setting them up for embarrassment. So a great way to combat this is to do exercises that you know and empower you. Have somebody either show you how to do it, or just do ones where you know 100% what the machine does, what the exercise looks like, what it targets, and what you can do, so you can only focus that and not focus on the fact that you don't know what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing in a certain exercise, that's okay. There's resources online. My channel's got a lot of great resources. You can even hire a trainer. That can work for you as well. In addition to that, you can also get some help from a trainer. Now, I've mentioned this numerous times, and it might not even be a specific trainer from the gym. You might even just know somebody who's really into fitness and health and they work out a lot. And you might say, hey, can I just tag along for one of your workouts? And maybe you're not going to do with them, but you can say to them, I just want to ask you a couple questions on things. And you can even just be explicit and say, I really just want you to show me how to work out. So, maybe a little cheaper that way. And you might find that you actually enjoy working out with that person. It can be a way to get a much better lasting relationship with them and help you to hopefully get to a point where you're confident in working out on your own. Now, bringing headphones is also another really, really good idea. And this is kind of self-explanatory because a lot of people nowadays are listening to podcasts, music, even TV shows, right? But it's something that should not be left unsaid, because the second you have headphones in, you aren't going to be concerned about all the other people around you. You aren't going to be able to be concerned about what that person's saying or thinking about me, right? Here's the thing. They're not saying or thinking anything about you. I just want to say that, but you might perceive that they are, okay? You might perceive that they are. So the headphones are great. I also really like the headphones when I was like talking about watching TV shows, because if you're doing some cardio where you're just walking or jogging or doing a Stairmaster, for example, for a long time, you can set up that Netflix and you can literally watch an entire show and the time goes by so much quicker. And you might even start enjoying cardio because you get to watch some Netflix doing it. And who doesn't like watching Netflix? Who doesn't like watching Netflix? So in addition to the headphones, another thing that you can do is to bring in some comfortable clothing. And you might see people when they work out at the gym who are wearing really tight clothing. You might see people wearing very revealing clothing, and this is great for them, right? They're confident, they're used to it, but you don't need to wear these types of clothes. If you'd much rather wear like a baggy t-shirt and some sweats, that's great. If you want to try some of these tighter clothing, that's great. Do something that makes you feel comfortable and empowered in, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to get you in the gym and not feeling self-conscious about yourself. So find some clothing that's comfortable and maybe try it out at home. So maybe go for a light walk, do some body weight exercises, see how it feels, see how you look when doing them. Maybe even watch yourself in the mirror and see like, oh yeah, that's a flattering piece of clothing for myself that I could wear. Another great thing that you can do is to start at home. So starting at home is great because you can learn some body weight movements, and you can maybe even try out some exercises that you've seen other people doing at the gym. You could film yourself with them to work on your technique and see how your technique actually is compared to that. And of course, you can literally just do the workout at home, so that's great because you're saving time. But ideally, you would use this as an adjunct to become more comfortable to work out long term at the gym. So you're building confidence, you're building the comfortableness of that at home to hopefully have it transfer into the gym location. So some good just general advice too is to remember that most people only care about their own workout. Most people are incredibly helpful to new people in the gym, or even people who are not new and just have been working out there for a long time. They're helpful to anyone. And most people love seeing new people work out. I fall into the category of all of these. I am in there just working about myself. I glance and look at other people. I notice other people, but I don't think much about them. I don't think, oh, like I can tell he's new because he's using that machine wrong. Like that just doesn't get into most gym goers' minds, because we're there to lift and work out. We've been doing it for a long time, and that's exactly what we're going to keep doing. People are not concerned about you. And at the end of the day, too, remember to do what you can and love yourself for taking a step in the right direction to improve your self-confidence, improve your overall health and wellness, and improve yourself in the gym, because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. So focus on yourself. You got this. Go ahead and comment down below and let me know if you are just starting out or how long you have been working out if you just started. So maybe you've only been doing it for a month. I'd love to know down below, and let me know if you got any more questions on starting workouts as a beginner, because I know it can become very, very daunting. So another question that beginners often will ask me is, how can I lose belly fat and gain muscle at the same time? I want to become super strong and really muscular, but I got a little pudge. So what's the trick to this? Well, let's talk about this. So belly fat in general is usually the last place to lose fat for most people. And this is biologically determined because it helps to protect your internal organs. So if you think about it, you want a little bit of fat on your body. And one, it's because it provides you some extra energy in times of famine, but we don't have a lot of famine nowadays, right? We don't have to worry about that. But it also does provide you a little cushion and protection for your internal organs, which will help to keep you alive and functioning at a high capacity, right? So losing your belly fat specifically is really, really tough because your body's literally telling you, hey, I'm trying to cling on this because I'm trying to keep you alive. That is why it is so tough for most people to lose belly fat, and especially that last bit of belly fat, because you're literally taking the last tiny bit of essentially safety net that your body has on you, okay? So some people, and this I want you to pay attention to, some people may never get fully defined abs. You may be able to get abs, and you may be able to get lean, but you may never be able to get fully shredded, as they call it. And this is because people who have a really tough time staying lean will likely feel like complete crap once they get to this low of a threshold. And I'm talking about getting really, really lean where you have super lean abs. You can get abs and visibly seen abs, but they just might not be super cut and super, super defined, okay? Most people like this will feel like complete crap once they get to this point, and they will not be able to sustain it, okay? A lot of people, once they get to this point too, they'll notice their energy plummets, their sex drive plummets, their body just doesn't function well, they get really irritable, they just don't function well in normal life. So the thing that you need to remember too is that skinny people who are naturally skinny, will have no problem staying with this, just because genetically they're used to staying at that weight. They're used to being skinny, they're used to being tiny, and that's just something you kind of have to play the cards that were dealt to you, right? Play the cards that were dealt to you. So losing fat and gaining muscle at the same time. Losing fat, the tough thing about losing fat is that you can't actually control where you lose it. So you might have a lot of fat on your body and you're specifically like, man, I don't really mind the fat on my arms or my legs, but my belly fat is terrible. Well, as we discussed, belly fat is usually the last place where people will lose fat from. And since this is the case, you can't target where you lose your belly fat, okay? You can't do a bunch of crunches to just burn belly fat. You can build up the muscle to make it slightly more defined on that area, but if you still have a layer of fat going over it, it's not really gonna matter at the end of the day. You simply need to be in a calorie deficit, and being in that calorie deficit will allow you to lose fat, generally speaking. But the thing about this is that you are going to lose fat throughout your entire body, and you will just have to keep losing fat until you get to a point where you've either lost enough belly fat where you're comfortable with yourself, or you have lost just enough fat in general where you are good. And maybe that's a point where you still have a little belly fat, but you're okay. Fat comes off from wherever you can't target it, okay? So losing fat and gaining muscle at the same time. The thing about this is that you can lose fat and gain muscle at the same time, but it only happens in a very specific niches or specific scenarios. Usually it's very overweight individuals who have a lot of belly fat, or just fat in general to lose, right? When we lose fat, it'll come off from our belly a little bit, but the rest of our body as well. So these overweight individuals have a lot of weight to lose, and they will notice when they start losing weight, they will rapidly lose weight and also gain some muscle pretty quickly. Novices, people who haven't worked out ever, and especially if you're a novice individual who's overweight, you're going to get the double whammy here because you're going to build a decent amount of muscle and lose weight at the same time. So you may notice that the scale might not change that much, but your body composition is, and that is a great thing because you are basically replacing the weight from your fat in muscle. The muscle isn't, or the fat isn't turning into muscle, you're just taking one out and putting one in, is kind of the idea. And then people who haven't lifted in a while, so this is something that I have personal experience with. I went through a summer of not being able to work out because I had some health stuff going on, right? And people who haven't lifted in a while will lose a lot of muscle mass, and they may gain a little bit of fat, but this really cool thing called muscle memory happens where when you build muscle, there's actually muscle cells that develop in your muscles. It's called myonuclei, and when you lose muscle mass, those cells never fully go away. So the second you start lifting weights again, it actually starts to basically use those muscle cells to say, hey, we know how to do this, we know how to do this. And you can build strength and muscle rapidly. It is super incredible. I literally saw it happen to myself. I was very skinny. I didn't gain a lot of weight, but I started lifting again, and literally after I think 2 months of lifting, I looked about 80% of what I did before. It was insane. So just a really good point to start lifting if you haven't already, because there are some permanent gains that will last forever. Another demographic of individuals is people on steroids. These people can lose belly fat and gain muscle at the same time because they are literally taking exogenous hormones which can do exactly what you want to do. So taking testosterone helps you to build muscle, of course, and doing that at the same time, you're going to potentially lose some fat as well. But that's not something I would ever consider most people to do. But just to realize that that is why they are so huge and very, very lean, because the steroids will naturally let them stay pretty lean, but also to build a bunch of muscle while being able to eat a lot of different foods. So kind of the bad news, you can't lose belly fat and gain muscle at the same time for most individuals, but some people can. The people who can, it becomes diminished returns very, very quickly, where you won't be able to do it for much longer, and you'll plateau, and then you'll be just like the rest of us, where you'll either have to do a really slow bulk, or you have to do a slow cut over time, basically till the end of time. So go ahead and drop a like if that section gave you some good value, and let me know if you plan on either cutting or gaining some weight to help improve your body composition. I'm curious. So the last thing we're going to talk about today, and this is kind of a fun one, is some tips on dealing with hunger and anger. So you probably know somebody who's told you that I'm super hangry, and that's the reason why I'm acting out right now. It's just because I'm hungry, and every time I get hungry, I get angry. That is the case for some people, and if that is happening maybe around you or to you, here's the deal about this. Why do you become angry when you become hungry? So hunger in general, it lowers the blood sugar release. Okay, so actually the blood sugar being lower, I should say, is what releases cortisol. So you're hungry, right? That means your blood sugar is a little bit low, and cortisol is released in your body. So cortisol is a stress hormone, which isn't always a bad thing. But in this case, the stress is that, hey, we have low blood sugar and we need to get some energy in our body, otherwise things are going to go bad. So This can help to raise your blood sugar to put you at a homeostasis in your energy and blood sugar. Now, low blood sugar can lower the levels of high level cognition. So basically, you aren't able to think as clearly, and this may lead to more primitive behaviors. And I say primitive in quotes, as in like anger or fear, those different types of things. So just having low blood sugar might not be able to make you think as clearly, and that can lead to you being potentially angry because you can't think like, oh, right now I'm just feeling a little hungry and I just need to get some food. No, your body might immediately go to that kind of fight or flight mode. So some tips to deal with hunger and anger is to have some snacks ready before the hunger ensues, right? So if you're somebody who notices it happens all the time, it'd probably be a good idea to have some snacks with you wherever you go. Obviously, if you're at home all the time, that makes it easy. But if you're out and about and it might be a long time till your next meal, probably a good idea to plan ahead or maybe have the snack right now to tide you over for later. Noticing the onset is important because once you notice the onset of, I'm starting to get slightly irritable, this might be a time for you to where you need to realize, hey, I need to plan a meal soon. Because if I don't plan a meal soon, it's going to become a bad situation for myself and the people around me. So being self-aware of that is really good as well. Another thing that you can do, and the last couple things are tips to maybe get rid of your hanger forever. And the first couple are kind of just band-aid fixes, but realize that it is simply an emotion. Hunger and anger, when you feel them, realize it's just your body telling you something, okay? You don't have to act on them. You don't have to necessarily react to them, I should say. So you can literally feel, oh yeah, my stomach is grumbly right now. And oh yeah, I feel like there's a little bit of agitation. That's just a feeling. And just like you feel that and notice it, you can also feel the exact opposite emotions of being peace and being okay with that and being light about the situation. So the more you feel them and notice them, the more you realize that you don't have to give them power and you don't necessarily have to feel them. And I'm not saying that you just forget about being hungry, but the hunger kind of has a different relationship to how it makes you feel, okay? It's not controlling you. And in addition to this, you can work on that emotional thing, but also just get used to not eating all the time. I think this is another reason why a lot of people deal with hanger or being hungry and angry, is because we're so used to just always having something readily available for us to eat the second we get hungry. So your body is just not used to just going off and going with no fuel. And realize that when you are quote unquote hungry and not eating, your body has literally enough fuel to last for days, even weeks without eating anything. It's absolutely incredible. I listened to this podcast too. There's this gentleman, extremely obese and overweight, who I think he was fasting for almost a year under doctor supervision. But obviously this is a very specific scenario and I would never recommend that for most people, but this person was literally staying alive from the stored body fat on their body for almost a year. I had to look up how long it was. It was a long time. It was over 300 days for sure. So doing this trains your body to use different energy sources. So when you don't have that quick acting fuel of carbohydrates and glucose being in your bloodstream right away, your body is then going to tap into the fat stores that exist. And when it taps into those fat stores, you're just using a different source of energy. And that's really, really potent, obviously for overall fat loss, but mainly just being used to having those different sources of energy. And intermittent fasting is a great way to kind of get used to this. I do intermittent fasting in my life where basically I skip breakfast, so I don't eat usually until about 11 or so, sometimes later. And in doing this, I've kind of like tamed and realize that, again, that hunger is it's there, but it doesn't really control me. Like, I know I'm going to get a meal at some point, and it really changes your relationship to how you feel when hunger comes. So some people, this might be a little tougher to do. Play with it in your own capacities, and just realize it's kind of a learning game at the end of the day, and do what works for you, and just try to be better about either planning ahead or getting used to not eating as much right on the time. So on top of that, make sure, if you haven't already, to like the video and subscribe to the channel once again, as we help individuals of all abilities improve their overall health and knowledge of the gym. And once you're done doing that, you're going to want to go ahead and check out this video right here, which is going to talk all about obesity, genetics, and weight loss, and how they work in your favor or against your favor. So you're going to want to go ahead, check out that video right there, talk all about that, and it's a really good conversation that I know you'll benefit from. So we'll see you next time, and remember to be all strong.